Friends, today we continue our exploration of Jesus' most important teachings in his Sermon on the Mount. Last week we talked about the Beatitudes, and today we are going to talk about Jesus' teachings about salt and light. Jesus, if you were listening to Sharon when she was talking, Jesus says, "You are the salt of the earth and the light of the world." How many of you, when you heard Sharon read those words from Jesus, gave a little sarcastic chuckle and thought, salt and light? Ha, not me. Yeah? How many of you thought, yeah, that pretty much sums me up? Yeah? The first time that I heard the phrase salt and light of the earth was when I was around 13 years old. My dad just finished a phone conversation with one of my aunts, and she is a kind-hearted, warm, loving person who likes to smile and joke easily. She volunteers at a local homeless shelter, and she taught me how to play Uno and Phase 10 when I was growing up. My aunt continues to be a fun and highly moral person. And when my dad hung up the phone, I asked him how the conversation went. And he replied, "She is the salt of the earth." And I thought to myself, wow, one day I want to be called the salt of the earth too. But as time went on, I ran into a problem. Namely, I often act like a jerk. Sometimes I would do and say mean things to my family and friends. I virtually ignored the poor kids at my school. And I used language back then that was salty, but in a bad way. I am ashamed of some of the things that I said when I was a teenager. And I admit to you today that I am marginally better than that 30 years later. I still struggle with being salt in this world in the way that I thought Jesus was talking about. But what if, when Jesus talks about salt and light, he's not talking primarily about morals? What if when Jesus says, "You are the salt and light of the world," he's making a pronouncement about who you are at the core of your being? What if being salt and light is not about being good, being moral, but just something that you already are? And I want to make this argument with you like this. Jesus says to his disciples that they are the salt and light of the earth. But if you continue to read the story of the Gospels, the disciples don't act like salt and light. Often when Jesus talks to them and tells them parables, Jesus will say that he is going to tell them a story in these parables. And the disciples frequently say to him, "What are you talking about? We don't get it. Why are you saying this to us?" And Jesus will respond to them with a phrase where he says in Matthew 15:16, "Are you still so dull?" Jesus, I'm often asked for a favorite Bible verse. And I have a new one. Matthew 15:16. "Adam, are you still so dull that you don't get it?" Have you ever heard one of your pastor's sermon afterwards thought, what is he talking about? That's probably because your pastor was totally confused on that day, not because you're dull. But sometimes you might have heard someone else say something and you thought, wow, I can barely scratch the surface of what that means. The disciples were the same way. They often didn't understand what Jesus was getting at. They were often dull. And later in the Gospels, Jesus began to teach his disciples that he was going to the cross. Why? Because Jesus saw that his ministry, there was a non-violent subversion of the political and the religious establishment of his day, would likely lead to his death. And immediately after Jesus tells his disciples that he is going to the cross, to this painful future, his disciples responded to his emotional pain by getting in an argument about which one of them was the greatest disciple. Talk about missing the point. And on another occasion, when Jesus told his disciples that he was going to the cross, his closest disciple, named Peter, promised that he would follow Jesus wherever he went, even if it meant going to the cross and dying. But Peter failed to follow Jesus to the cross. Instead, he denied knowing who Jesus even was. In fact, the Gospels tell us that Jesus' disciples abandoned Jesus in his time of desperate need. The Gospels present the disciples as dull guys who were prone to rivalries and who abandoned their great teacher. They are not portrayed as great heroes, but great failures. But here's what I find so fascinating about the disciples. They were the ones who told others the story. They didn't wash over the dullness or their rivalries or the truth that they abandoned Jesus. They told the unvarnished truth about themselves and about their failures. And isn't that so refreshing? What does this have to do with Jesus' pronouncement that his disciples were the salt and light of the earth? Jesus pronounced that his disciples were salt and light, not because they were good, moral people, because they often failed in that direction. Jesus called them the salt and light of the earth because they were beloved children of God. The disciples did not define themselves by the failures of their past. They learned from the failures of their past. And instead, the disciples defined themselves by the fact that they were children of God. They were loved just as they were. And together they moved forward in a community to share their love and their light with one another and to be salt with each other. So, friends, the Christian tradition has rituals that we share that remind us of the salt and the light that we already are. Not that you have to become, but that you already are. And one of those rituals has to do with water. And so this morning I thought that it would be a good idea for those of you who would like to come forward to participate in this ancient ritual that Christians have had for 2,000 years of water. And today we have salt water. And if you would like to come forward to be reminded that you are a beloved child of the Spirit of God, I invite you to come forward, and I will bless you with salt water of God's love. Friends, you are, as Jesus says, already the salt and light of the world. You are already valued in the realm of God, and you are valued here at Clackamas United Church of Christ. Amen.
Hi everyone, this is Adam Erickson, reminding you that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome at Clackamas United Church of Christ. We are located at 15303 Southeast Webster Road in Milwaukie, Oregon. We are so glad that you found this podcast. All of our podcasts will always be free, but we rely on the financial support of our members and our friends. If this podcast meant something to you, you can help us out in two ways. You can share this podcast with someone you think might be interested. You can also help us financially by donating to the wonderful missions we have here at Clackamas United Church of Christ. To do so, you can go to our Facebook page, our website, or our YouTube channel, and click on the Donate Here button. Our worship services start at 10:30 on Sundays, except for during the summer months when we start at 10 o'clock. If you would like more information on our church, you can visit our website at c-ucc.org. You can also reach out to me through email at adam@c-ucc.org. Until next time, grace and peace be with you.